Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, and welcome to our fourth event in our series titled Amplifying BIPOC Voices in Sustainability, hosted by interns at the UW-Madison Office of Sustainability. Thank you so much again for joining us, and the theme for tonight's event is climate change activism. We at the Office of Sustainability want to acknowledge the lack of diversity both within our team and our office, which is almost entirely white. This reflects a larger trend across campus and in mainstream environmentalism, in which the necessary and valuable voices of BIPOC who have long led the fight to protect our communities and environment are excluded. We've created this series in an effort to recenter these voices within our own campus community. In addition, we believe that it's important to acknowledge that sustainability is not just about the environment, but is also inevitably tied to social and economic factors and influences. We hope this series will help to illuminate those facets of sustainability. Also, before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the land that I'm currently on, and maybe most of you are on. I'm currently in the Madison area, which is and was Ho-Chunk land, which was forcibly taken. I think it's important to acknowledge the land that we are on because I am a settler, and growing up, I was never taught or knew whose land I was on, and it was never really talked about. Also, as we are hosting this event to amplify BIPOC voices, it is important to acknowledge the Indigenous land that we are on and the past and current oppression that Indigenous people face. If you're joining us from elsewhere, I encourage you to look up and educate yourself about whose land you're currently on.
Thank you, Cassie. For today's panel, we have two panelists, Micheal Williams and Stephanie Salgado, who are both students at UW-Madison, and they will each present for around 10 to 15 minutes, and then we'll have time for Q&A from the audience, and we also have a couple of pre-chosen questions. If you have questions, there should be a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, but also feel free to message Hannah Franz, who will be managing our chat for us tonight. And to get started, we will introduce Micheal. So after graduating from high school and Information Technology Academy, Micheal traveled from the Oneida Reservation to UW-Madison, where he currently studies. Micheal is a psychology major, and recently he was accepted to the UW-Madison Law School and will begin in fall of 2021. Micheal works within Native communities to better tribes in education, science, and mental health. While he was interested in law, Micheal still devotes a lot of time to photography, graphic design, and video editing. Micheal, feel free to introduce yourself further and talk about your climate activism.
Hi, well, Sagoli Swagwek, Micheal Williams, Niun Getsoniota Agani, Wageskle Wage Ni Wagi Deloda. I said, hello, everyone. My name is Micheal Williams. I am from the Oneida tribe of Wisconsin, and I am Bear Clan. That was a wonderful introduction. Thank you. I don't have much to add to that, but I do have a couple of studies or cases that I wanted to show you that have been sent out to us and provide a lot of information about sustainability happening within the Native nations. So I'm just going to share this screen with you. And the first one I'm going to show is an Oneida Nation case study. So the National Congress of American Indians did a case study on the Oneida Nation of Wisconsin about their sustainability practices, focusing on their food system. So as Cassie mentioned in the introduction, the social part of sustainability is involved a lot with food and food security. And on the Oneida Reservation, there's not a lot of food security. Most of it is not healthy. And on other reservations, it is even more desperate and in worse conditions. But this is a case study of the Oneida's community integrated food systems approach. So this is kind of their strategy for rebuilding an agricultural food system within the Oneida Nation. So they have these 5 steps: build a community mindset for healthy foods, increase local agriculture and food production. 3, build local food economies. 4, integrate local foods into community outlets. And 5, ensure sustainability development and practices. So the main reason I bring this up as a case study is, one, it provides wonderful information about what this tribe is doing for its people. But the other thing that I want to point out with this is that this is this tribe's plan. Every tribe has their own goals, their own messages, and their own desires. So what they want to do, which is normally be sustainable, but whatever they want to do, that is their jurisdiction and their practice of sovereignty. So these case studies are a good approach because they're good at showing that you can't just lump all Native Americans into one group and judge how are they engaging with sustainability. There's hundreds of cultures within the categorization of Native American. So understanding how those cultures differ and how each individual nation as a people wants to combat these problems is their own right and their own sovereign um, within them. Sorry. The next one I'm going to bring up is the College of Menominee Nation. So this is a virtual conference that was just released like yesterday. It just got sent to me. For a little background, the Menominee Nation has a very strong lumber economy and has been practicing sustainable lumber practices for a long time, since time immemorial. And so this series is just a bunch of videos talking about different sustainability practices within the Menominee Nation, as well as giving some historical background to their gardening and food practices. So that's all I really wanted to talk about today. I will be sure to send these links in the chat so that people can take a deeper look. And if you're interested in seeing about more tribes or anything like that, you can reach out to me.
Thanks, Michael. Our next panelist is Stephanie Salgado, who was born and raised in Tegucigalpa, Honduras, and has fond memories of life in her home country. Her family is large but close-knit. In 2015, Stephanie and her family left Honduras for the US due to gang violence and corrupt politics. When Stephanie came to Chicago and then Madison, she saw nobody that looked like her and experienced xenophobia and discrimination. From her experiences, Stephanie was inspired to learn about the social justice perspective of climate change. Now, Stephanie is a student at UW-Madison studying political science and environmental studies with a certificate in public policy and is seeking to create a sustainable and equitable future through pragmatic political compromises.
Thank you for that beautiful introduction. I'm surprised you read the whole thing. But yeah, my name is Stephanie Salgado Tamirano. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I guess besides that introduction, I'm just so thankful that you guys organized this type of event.
Yeah, thank you for introducing yourselves and talking a little bit about your work with climate change activism. The first question that we have for you is, what was the moment or moments that inspired you to become climate change activists?
I can go first unless Stephanie has something. Mine has a deeper backstory, but I grew up with the Information Technology Academy program that I attended. I attended it with one of a fellow Oneida person, Sophie Skenendor, who's a big environmental activist, and her father was also a nationwide known Native activist for all of his fights and progressiveness in sustainability and environmentalism. And a couple of years ago, I had the privilege of sitting at one of his talks right in the center of campus at the Discovery Building. And I was just sitting there listening to this man talk. And if you've never heard an elder tell a story, a Native elder, it's truly a spectacle. It's something beautiful and it's so creative. But when you're listening, it just completely radicalized me. Everything that I thought I understood or thought that I wanted to do just was questioned. And as I'm sitting there listening to him, I was like, this just has to change. Like, it's not I think for the majority of my life, I'm like, it will fix. Like, we will come with a solution. Eventually, we'll have to do something. But then I realized you can't just be idle and let it happen. You have to be a part of the movement. And so that's what really changed me. Unfortunately, Sophie's father passed away. So it was a very hard hit for our community. But I bring that up because I would like to take just a moment of silence just to remember him in the honor of BIPOC activists in sustainability. Thank you. I turn it over to Stephanie, and I'm sorry for the dramatic end.
No, totally respect that. Actually, right up the same ally as Micheal. In Honduras, I wasn't a big believer of like individual action. I just thought, someone was gonna solve it. And so Honduras already has so many problems with like corruption and violence. And I was like, why would our main concern be climate change? We can't afford even like, having good schools, and not everyone has a house. Like people live in extreme poverty. And it was later when I got like educated about systems of oppression, especially in the United States, that I was just like, wow, like climate change is truly a multifaceted issue that like is affecting everyone. And unless you bring everyone on board, this is not going to be change. And so when I was like doing this whole like self-discovery of like self-identity, I started realizing how in my own country there's a huge like legacy and history of like environmental activists. And in particular, there's this indigenous leader who was from the Lenca people in Honduras, who Berta Cáceres, her name is that, and she was trying to protest against this energy company that wanted to put a dam in a sacred river of theirs. And she opposed to it since day one. They did really brutal forces, and they brought the police, they brought counter protesters. Everything just was like blowing up in Honduras. And even after she won, like the energy company left, she somehow turned out to be dead. We don't know yet who killed her, but obviously, I think based on the facts, we have to think that all her mission was just not seen in the bright light by many, and she was seen as like one step, a rock in the way. And so when you said about like BIPOC activists and we must take a moment of silence, I truly thought, like all those people that sacrifice so much, and all because their identity is at risk and is in danger. And then I guess besides that, I just, as an immigrant, I became a much more aware of the intersectionalities of my identity as an immigrant woman of color from a poor third world country, and how important it is that I'm part of this conversation about climate change.
Thank you both for sharing. That was really impactful to hear about your personal background and how that influenced your current climate change activism. For students who are also interested in getting involved with the sustainability movement and climate change activism in general, how would you recommend they find resources on campus and in the Madison community?
I can go first. I know that I think also Micheal has popped into this org. It's called WSCAC. So it's the Wisconsin Student Climate Action Coalition, and it's a bunch of leaders. I know there's some people from here too that are part of it, and it's like leaders from all the sustainability and social justice orgs on campus, all with one mission to promote events and trying to get people out there. So I think if that's one way you want to get involved, that's great. Otherwise, we understand that mental health or people already have a lot on their plate. So if you just can, sign the petitions, go out and protest. That will be more than enough to show your support and actually, take your own side on the story.
Adding on to that, there's WSCAC is definitely a great resource just because it's all of the sustainability student leaders from around campus. So it's such a great combination of everything that's going on. I think on the university side, we don't always get the best results from the university, but right now I sit as the undergraduate representative for the Sustainability Advisory Council. And the goal of that council is to create recommendations for the university on how to run sustainability, given this STARS report that focuses on academics, management, and other resources, which I can send you that. And when you look at that report and compare us to other universities, we're doing horribly. So a great way to get involved in a really big change is going to some open forums that they've been sending out. I can share those resources, but at these open forums, students are able to share how they feel about the different areas and what they would like to see. And that directly impacts what recommendations we give. And as a student, as representative of the undergraduate students, if anyone wants to send something to me directly, I'll be sure to bring it directly to the council. They're all very receptive. There's some people on there that aren't receptive from what I've heard of from other activist leaders, but I'm also on there, so that's a point against them, a vote against them. But yeah, I think definitely WSCAC, definitely just researching the orgs within that and trying to find the one that fits with you most, because there's so many different identity-based ones and ones that focus on different things. So finding one that can get you involved. And then I think the final way is just education, because there's still a lot of people that are ignorant to the fact that the world is not in a good place, and that we as a community are not safe right now. So just making sure that that one relative that is annoying, make sure that they're not annoying anymore. It's hard, and I am very comfortable with, or not comfortable. I have a history also with annoying relatives, but it's important to get everyone on board on this, because it's not a problem that splits down the line. It's a problem that affects all of us and what we're going to do.
Yeah, that's very helpful. I think especially on a big university, sometimes it can be challenging to find your niche, but WSCAC looks like a great organization to see a little bit about different sustainability efforts that are going on around campus. Would you both be able to describe more specifically what organizations you work with and how you're currently involved in climate change activism, and then share how the UW and Greater Madison communities can support your current efforts?
I can go first just because I think mine will be shorter. I've recently just stepped into these roles as sustainability leader. Wunk Sheek always has it as a priority, but it's not. There's a lot of priorities for Wunk Sheek. We are supporting the whole Native student population. So sustainability isn't always the first thing we get to talk about at any of our events. But I think it's always been something that I've had to talk about at different events that's happened, and kind of go over what Wunk Sheek's opinion is and how we're trying to fight for it. So I'd say I don't have a lot of history with it, but I think these are my first steps into this leading in this area. And I think stuff like this, being involved, sharing your voice, spreading your opinion and spreading the knowledge is all that really matters for something that is this polar in what people believe.
Yeah, just like adding to what Michael has said, I think in whatever way you can get involved, whether you being an advocate, an activist, or an educator or educated person, is still like very important and like the most you can do at times in life. Sometimes life hits you with different stuff. And with having said that, like for instance, high school, I was so frustrated when I found out about systems of oppression, like climate change. So I created my a club in a high school called Green Club, and through them, I was like, we should organize the first climate strike here in Madison. And we were just like 7 people, but I was so excited about that. I was telling them every day we should do it. And then I realized a lot of students from other Madison high schools also wanted to do it. So they contacted me and we met up. We realized we have the same interests. We're so driven about social justice too. So we made it happen. Madison has had 2 climate strikes, and as a speaker in both, it's quite intimidating having so many people hear you, but also so many people want to hear you. And I think that made a huge impact on me. And then from those opportunities, I got to be part of as a member of the climate change task force here in Wisconsin. And the governor chose me. I was an 18-year-old at the time. I was a freshman in college. So I was the youngest member of the whole committee, and they were mostly white, old people. There's, it's just the demographics, but it still was intimidating, sometimes coming in with my red hair or just my personality. But at the end, I just knew that we all had one goal, which I very much appreciated. We created conversations that were not happening before. I highlighted issues within social justice that they didn't even knew about. And I think whatever you can do to highlight this issue in your life is good enough. And for you to, take a step forward and touch the waters with what you want to do the rest of your life too.
Yeah, that's very helpful. I think we all have different roles to play in our fight against climate change. We have a question from the chat. If you could change a few things on campus to make it a more sustainable and inclusive place for all students, what would they be and why?
I would, this one would be like a big change. So I feel like it counts as like 2 or 3 of however many I get. But I'd say community gardens as a thing, an object, but also as a practice, as like a community thing that we all agree and are participating in and are enjoying. Just because I think that's a practice that is so small and so easy, but it really provides a lot for the community and a lot for the earth around you.
I think what I would want to see, along with what Michael said, like, wouldn't it be awesome if we had community gardens and then that same food became food for like dining halls, and then we all had like one loop that was like closing itself, have like rooftops with like white paint on it so less sun is gonna emit to them and then like radiate heat, along with that, like heaters and like just are used for fossil fuel. I know Madison has in the past been so dependent on fossil fuels, and to change that, we have no reason why to stick with them if in the future we have no more time left to amend what has been broken. We have time limits that they can be irreversible, and once we reach them, those tipping points, there is no going back. So that's one initiative I would like to see from Madison, and like promote all those student orgs in Madison that also want to put like solar panels. I totally have my support on their side, but I would also want to see more social justice ally alignments. I would want to see the university taking a stand and saying like Black Lives Matter, and no student is undocumented, offering free tuition for those that do not normally have access to education, to have once access to education and learn about their own community, learn about what's going on around them. Everyone deserves that, and like an economic barrier should not be one of them. Along with those lines, I would say like Madison could also, support the UW BIPOC coalition, with many other identity orgs, as Micheal said, because we have already so many issues within like our own communities, whether being Indigenous, Black, Latino, Latinx, that we cannot always center sustainability. And so we need to have everybody in the conversation to make actual change.
Thank you. Kind of a follow-up to that. How can UW, like the UW administration, help promote and engage in your climate change activism on campus right now?
I don't want to be blunt, but also going off the point that Stephanie just said, by engaging and being a part of the activism, I think that's the step that they haven't even done yet. They haven't taken a step towards us. They've held their position in terms of just trying to be political about it and not take a side, but it's no longer like you can't take a side, you just have to jump in now. And you have to put all of your resources towards solving this problem. And it's frustrating to me because I think on a university level, we lead so many people in the state and in the nation and in the world. So if we started implementing these practices, that's going to send a message to a lot of other people and a lot of organizations and how they are going to run, how the vendors that we work through, if we require our vendors to be sustainable as well, the downstream implications for all this would be so different. The world would change a lot just from our one action. So I think stepping to the table and having the conversations.
I agree with all that Micheal said.
Yeah, that's very great. Thank you both for sharing your views. This one is specifically for Stephanie, but could you give a brief description of what the Wisconsin Climate Change Task Force does?
Yeah. So a report was already released on October, but it was an initiative for a whole year to meet up with different representatives all the way in the energy sector to like social justice groups in Milwaukee to have a conversation and bring up recommendations for them to be brought up here to state representatives to get passed for laws. And so I think that we met once a month, and we would go before COVID, right? And then COVID hit around the states, and we would go and have like different talks and different things we should consider. And once that like recommendations we brought up were like discussed and then like crafted, we made this whole report, and it's available actually to the public if you want to check it out.
Thank you. So you touched a little bit on COVID. Could you both speak to how COVID has changed what your activism looks like and how it's shifted some of your focuses?
I think it's hard to protest for the earth away from the earth. It's just a little weird, but I think it's still possible, and the conversations that are happening I think are still meaningful, and the events that are happening I think are still bringing new information and bringing new momentum to it. I think the main goal of during COVID times is keeping the momentum until we can get back to the earth and actually be a community again. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Micheal said, like, it's hard to do a protest in Zoom. You know, protests are meant to be disruptive, are meant for you to sacrifice something, like whether that is like work time, your own time, your energy, um, to send out a message to those people that are not listening to you, whether they didn't listen to you at the polls, whether they didn't listen to you when you contact your legislators. It's meant for you to be disruptive. But of course, we must abide by, public health recommendations, and I am in total support of it. So I think we all kind of can share that feeling where like you post petitions on your social media, you talk about it with your friends, but it just never seems enough. And to some extent, you almost feel like, am I doing it like performative? And no, if your intentions are still good and they're still to like, sacrifice something in your life for a bigger movement, for a bigger message, then it's not performative. And at the end, just like Michael said, like this movement, even though has been on the silence, it has been a reason on the silence. Like, for instance, like the Black Lives Matter got so much more media coverage. And I thought that was an issue that had to be like highlighted, like high key. And I'm just so glad, that these conversations emerged and started, just like Michael said, so then we can progress and move together to finding social justice and climate justice.
Yeah, I like how you both touched on it's very difficult to engage in things over Zoom when it's supposed to be such a disruptive act. Kind of shifting gears a little bit, what are some of the most exciting projects you have been a part of through your various organizations during your time here at UW?
I think one of the I have two. I think the first one would be one of the first protests I went to, where it was just a couple of environmental students from the high schools around Madison that reached out to Wunk Sheek and were like, "Hey, we're doing this protest. Could you share it? And please attend if you could." And me and a friend were available, and we went, and it was just a small one of like 7 people, like Stephanie said, and we just kind of sat in front of Abe, and we made a lot of noise. And then we went inside and we sat outside of the chancellor's office, and it just felt good to be there and to be doing something. I think the second time is probably this SAC committee board that I've been sitting on, just because I feel like I can actually do something here. I'm having a voice in some active change. So I think I'm hoping something good comes of that.
Just like Michael said, WSCAC was definitely something needed on campus that not a lot of people see it at the time, but just having different orgs like organized for one mission, at the end we all have that one mission for climate justice, was so needed and necessary, because now if we promote an event, we can tell other orgs to tell their members to promote the event, and it can be just a lot more concentrated to like reach the whole campus. And like Michael said, I actually believe they're like listening to us and we're bringing on change, and there's conversations happening about it. In addition to that, I think one of the biggest things I've done, and I'm so grateful for the people that reached out to me about, was Green Card Youth Voices, which is a nonprofit that highlights immigrant voices for what they're doing and their immigration story. So it's a book, and I have it right here. I'm like the first story, but I will not show the picture because I don't look so well on it. But yeah, it's a book to talk about local Madison students who are immigrants and their stories regarding it. And through that organization has brought me the opportunity to be doing a lot of speaking events. And at every speaking event, I have had the platform to, that's a privilege in itself, the platform to speak about climate justice and racial justice, how that is important because that intersects with immigration issues. At the end, we're all fighting for one goal, and that is for climate justice.
Thank you. You both have been involved in a lot of incredible projects despite both being undergrad students, and Stephanie, you even mentioned being on the task force when you were only 18. How do you think climate change activism is being influenced by the youth movements around the globe today?
I think it was a big change, and I think a lot of people can recall when Greta Thunberg first became popular and then became the person of the year with Times Magazine. Like, she was so I don't want to call it brutal. She was so blunt about her message and how there's so many discrepancies with what people want to do, but they were offering her like money and prizes when all she really wants is action from politicians, is action from world leaders to actually bring on an initiative and change this and solve this. Because I think this movement was created by youth because youth realize they don't have no other option. If it's not now, then it's never, because we have a timing clock, and climate justice, well, climate change anxiety is a real thing. And so with that having been back on our heads, we just know that like we have to bring on the conversation, because if adults do want to act like adults, we'll be the adults in the room. And then all that, I think this movement was also created by Black and Indigenous people. And so many people forget about that, but they're the main ones that brought this discourse and allowed us to see what the true reality is of systems that are here to oppress us. So I remember when like we first started planning with the Madison climate strike, we were talking about all the activists in the South Dakota pipeline. I think that's what it was. And how like brave they were and like how we should follow on their steps. And that's what we did. And we were just so inspired by their message and how they were willing to risk, energy, time to be in this and really push forward their message.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything Stephanie said. I don't know if it's just because I'm a senior and I'm reminiscing on my time at UW, feeling old, but youth are our future. Like, they are our next leaders. And I know I'm not that old, but I feel old. But but it's because of these youth advocate activists. They're just doing so much. There's these, like I said, the people who reached out to me to do the protest, they're so young and they care so much and they're so passionate and they're doing all these different things to educate their peers. And it's just beautiful. And I think they're, like Stephanie said, they are leading a lot of this movement. And I think it's important to listen to them and to hear their concerns, because that climate anxiety is real and how that's impacting them is really important. And their decisions on what to do because of that are important as well.
Yeah, thank you both for touching on climate anxiety. I think a lot of people in the climate change sphere and sustainability in general often experience this climate activism exhaustion. How do you personally cope with this?
I can go. I would say trying to be with the land, and that involves all the spiritual practices that I can do to just feel like I'm back with the land and that I'm communicating with it and I'm a part of it. I'm in community.
I'm open for suggestions. I'm always there's always room to improve. One thing I have found that truly like re-energized me is going back to my roots, so going back to my family. And so whenever I feel like homesick, either you're like being alone or just being in Madison or Wisconsin or the United States, like my parents remind me all the time the reason why I came here and the reason why I should continue the work that I'm doing every day.
if anyone needs a spot on campus, there's a beautiful tree that was planted up on Observatory right at the top of the hill. If you're looking at social sciences from Ingram, it's right to the left and it's right by the big telescope or whatever. I go there quite often. It was planted by a Mohawk elder, and it represents the tree of peace from the Haudenosaunee Confederacy.
Thank you. I think those are both really beautiful suggestions, especially right now with everything that's going on in the world. Those are all of the questions that I have for you. If anyone in the audience wants to throw anything in the chat, that would be great. Otherwise, Micheal and Stephanie, do you have any other last words you'd like to share with us?
Very quickly, I'm sorry, I was just notified of an emergency. But I just wanted to say that in whatever shape or form you can get involved is worth it. Whatever shape or form that you can actually put your, attend your own needs, whether that be mental health, your own schooling, but still do something else that is meaningful. And we appreciate that, even if you're not BIPOC, even if you're not part of a marginalized identity, that is still worth what you're doing.
I'd definitely like to just thank everyone for who organized this and got this together. This is a great series and I'm really happy to see it happening on campus.
Yeah, thank you for coming today. It was a pleasure to hear about your experiences and how we can get involved with climate change activism on campus.
Yeah, if there's no further questions, then we can start to wrap up. Again, I know Stephanie's no longer here, but thank you, Micheal, and thank you, Stephanie. You both were great. Thank you to everyone for joining us. Thanks as well to the Nelson Institute for Environmental Studies and the Facilities Planning and Management, which are the two administrative homes for the Office of Sustainability. As a reminder, this is the fourth event of our new series this year. Hosted by the Social Sustainability Coalition. Our next event will be the last Wednesday of March, so March 31st. And our theme is not decided yet, but if you follow us on social media at Sustain UW, you can stay up to date about who our panelists will be, what our theme will be, and resources we share. Yeah, so thank you so much for joining us. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your night.
Bye.
Bye, thank you.